Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for taking your time out from your busy schedule and joining and joining today's free training session, IT business for IT business analysts and product owners. My name is Nadir. Those who coming first time, welcome, and those who are coming back, welcome back. And I'll be your host for today. Today's session brought to you by Cognitive Links. We are the local training provider, and we are striving to become your preferred training provider when it comes to technical trainings and also soft skill training programs as well in Malaysia. All right, without further ado, today is our fifth session of our series of our free training programs that we are doing on a weekly basis every Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about APIs, importance of APIs for ITBA professionals. And today with us, as usual, our trainer, our preferred trainer is Makran Patak. Just to give you a bit of a background, Makran has over 20 years of experience in this arena, and he started as a technical analyst, and he worked his way up all the way to become a product owner and director. And he has worked with multinational companies like BNP Paribas, Standard Chartered, Bank of Singapore, and etc. And then he also worked with consultancy companies. So what it means is that he has a comprehensive understanding of how the industry works and what the pain points are, whether you're coming from a consultancy background or you are working in a buyer side of the industry. So, and without further ado, I would like to pass the stage, the virtual stage, to Makran Patak. Hi, Makran.
Thanks, Nadir, for a brief introduction. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fifth session today. As Nadir mentioned about myself, this is my profile. Those who would like to get connected with me on LinkedIn can connect me. I used to work for large corporations, banks in Singapore, last 20 plus years now. And it's my privilege that I'm, worked with those big companies, and very happy to be here. So where I can share my, learning with you and also learn something from you guys. Without further delay, let's dive in. So today we are going to cover mostly on the API and their understanding in software development, how and where when you want to use it, and how it what it is called for a single things. As a BA, as an ITBA, what is your responsibility in API design lifecycle, design and development both, and even testing. And this one I'm going to share with my experience, right? So this is not a bookish knowledge, but I'm going to share you what I actually did it for many companies as ITBA as well, because I played a role as ITBA, I played a role as a product owner, chief product owner, program manager, and so on. So this is coming from the real life examples, specifically from our Southeast Asia industries, various industries. And maybe some effective collaboration technique with developer, because there's always a ping pong happen between the developer and the ITBA and so on. So I will also share some effective techniques. How do you, where you get engage yourself and make the API design and development more fun and more clear roles and responsibility between the BAs and other parties during the API design and development. So quickly before we jump into the topics, right? I think the API is not new for a lot of people, though the API, but some companies or some ITBA, they are not directly involved on design of the API. So when I say design, I'm not talking about the technical design. I'm talking about the design means what should be the request, what should be the response, and so on. So mostly that is the area where the ITBA can play a stronger role, because ITBA knows the functionality, knows the business requirements in detail, and then we can design the API correctly. So basically, as API, everybody knows it's an application programming interface, right? Is a set of protocol and definition that can allow one application to communicate with another application. So application to application communication can happen using API. Um, it mentioned that the uh, um, uh, if you look at the old way back, right? So API is not very new, right? It is there from long time, right? So in simple terms, if you want to say, it's a connection between the computers, between the computer programs, and it is a type of the software offering a service to the other piece of software. So it's like machine to machine talking, you can say simply, right? Now, as I mentioned earlier, the API it's not old, or that it's not new. Sorry, that okay we know only last 10 years and 20 years. It's actually beyond that. Now, why suddenly it becomes so famous and popular? Because of the another method they're using called as REST API, which we're going to discuss more in detail today. So if you look at the diagram here, we have end users and we have a computer browser or mobile device. Basically, your API, the request or response will go to API. I'll show you how the request response looks like, or maybe what it means. You are using on daily basis. We'll also show you that. And then basically it will go to a web server and basically get the data either from database or some other resource and respond back to the end user. So it's like it is as simple as that you go to the you know you go to the restaurant and you you ask waiter to you ask for a menu card first. So first thing you ask for a menu card, and then you choose, okay, I need pizza, I need pasta, or I need French fries, or maybe I need chicken nuggets or whatever. And the waiter will take down an order and then they will deliver that order. Now, same fashion happen that um, when you actually use the another interface, I will quickly show you. When you go to Lazada, right? You type the shoe for men, or shoe for women, whatever it is, right? So what happened is that it is giving you the menu, it is giving you the details, and these are details are coming from the API only. So you see all the details here on the page which is appearing. Now it's like somebody presenting you the menu. Now what you say, I say, oh, I like this. Now when I select, I'm actually getting into detail. I'm asking the waiter, okay, tell me about these shoes and all, for example, and then you can order, for example. So similar fashion, we also do when we use the API. Now, as I mentioned, API, they are not very new, so they are fresh from last time. So last time before, 20 2000, and I think even before, um, web services are very famous, right? Basically, so what is the difference, right? So web services, if somebody is who is very senior and experienced, they will tell web services actually they follow a specific protocol. It means, what do you mean by specific protocol? Um, if you are, you can take an example. You went to the restaurant and waiter can only speak German. Now you cannot speak German, so then the communication will not happen. So web services was similar fashion where they have to follow the exact same format for the request, same format for response or something like that. But for the REST API, which we're going to discuss today, they're not much. They're quite flexible. They're super flexible, right? So with example, I'll show you today, and that is the main difference. So web services are almost end of the life now, but still there are companies, legacy systems still using the web services and some for specific use cases, but everything else is on the REST API now. And this web service is based on the XML actually. So they're using the XML tags and everything, and every time you need to pass that format. So it was quite it was slow, also quite troublesome if you want to make changes to that. So that is why this RESTful API is getting very, very popular, and getting more even popular than even before. In fact, you can take any technology, including the blockchain, they all use APIs. Now, how it works, right? It's a simple way. The client initiate a request. Okay, now who are client here in the case of Lazada? We are the client. Okay, we are initiating the request. We are putting the URL here. So basically, when you ask men for shoes, behind there the URL will be there. I'll show you the example. We have Postman here with example, and then that API makes a call for a server to get the details. So basically, when I'm searching shoes for men, actually it is going back and say, give me all the details of latest shoes. Now that data is purely depend upon many factors. They will check Makarand is from Singapore. Okay, he's from which location? Okay, maybe I'm living in Sengkang Punggol area. They will say then, okay, then what Makarand bought last time means, is there similar liking shoes he bought? So they will show similar data to you. That is part of all the data analytics and your profiling. Maybe the same shoes for men, if somebody else search, might get some different result, right? Because when they pass the information, they also pass the profile. This is we're requesting for Makarand, and then they know, okay, Makarand likes this, Makarand don't like blue color, or maybe Makarand don't like pink color, for example, and they only show or present those shows which are more related to my profile. There are many ways to create the profile. We're not going to detail into that, and that's why they say, right, the social media companies knows more than they know more than what you know about yourself. So the API makes a call to server and asks for requirements. So when I type, it will make a request to the server. Then the server send a response back to the API in the with the information. So while they are sending, they have a lot of business logic which I mentioned about profiling and all and all. So then they basically show the result back to the user. That result come into the different format. I will show you the JSON a sample, and then our programming language, front end programming, will get the data and convert and show in the nice gadgets and displays. Okay, so that is something we'll discuss. So what are the benefits of them, the API? The first very important benefit is the interoperability. Okay, so what does that mean is basically this enables uh, um, uh, the different software application system communicate each other regardless of what system they are. As long as an API has been exposed by somebody, anybody can go and access data, right? So when I say anybody, of course they can put a restriction that, okay, maybe those people, only registered people can access the data, otherwise will not show the listing, something like that. So and what they do basically, they're defining a standard rate of set of rules and communication for communication, which basically that API facilitate the integration and the diverse the technology. So basically what does that mean is, of course, when you ask for data, you need to ask in specific format. Okay, but once they provide you the data, it's up to you what data you want to use. It's your choice. You don't need to. So what does that mean is, I ask for suppose give me the employee details information. So employee detail come first name, last name, middle name, sex, salary, joining date, address, telephone number. But I'm only interested into the date of birth, so I can calculate the age of the employee, for example. So I can, as a consumer, I can just get the date from the response, and remaining data I can just ignore it. So that is something we can do it, and with example we'll discuss that. The second is the modularity and the scalability. Okay, so modularity is nothing but creating modular. So you all might heard about the microservices concept, right? Where they create a very simple services where on a screen they may show you only one data field. What does that mean is that when you request the data back to the backend, you only request one specific data to be shown on the screen. And why it is needed? Because it will enhance the scalability as an individual component, right? The scale, and they can be scaled independently. Changes can be done independently, and deployment can be done independently. So when I say independently, um, what happens is that the a specific API is being accessed by many people in the organization, or many different departments in the organization, or outside the organization, for example. So if you're making changes to a specific API, then you need to inform a lot of people, right? And especially if you're building a social media app, and if you're from the such a companies where the external people are accessing your API, you don't even know who are accessing. So you can't just make changes before you informing them. If you build the microservices architecture from day one, then you know that there's only one field, and changing that will not much impact much, because you can do A/B testing and all in order to check if it's failing, or if people are still accepting our request or not. So that is something can happen with this scalability part. Of course, rapid development time to market, because it will accelerate the development cycles by providing the pre-built functionalities, and developer gets integrated within the application. So ultimately what happens is that it's like you can take an example of, you have a huge database, a lot of information available, and uh, now with their data, how do you monetize that data, right? So basically, you can define the many APIs, nothing but request response methods for a lot of other data, create them by function, employee data, customer data, product data, for example, and then you can expose the API. So any team who want to build an app, they can just use the API and build an app, right? So I'll give simple example. In Singapore, SBS Transit is a bus service. So basically, government gives the free API. So you can actually build your own app, and you can build your own bus tracking app. So you can put a bus stop number and bus number. You'll know the next bus coming in. So that is possible to build it. But how it is possible? Because they already exposed the API. So if you are a good developer, you can build it, and then you can do the time to market. So organization actually, they bring their product and service market very, very quickly. This is a fact. So you take example of banks, for example. So bank also have a lot of data. So they want to expose the rates, because banks has changed, the rates change every day based on the multiple factors. So they can have API to check the rates. Recently, I saw somebody build an app where you can see gold rates from the world. So every country has the gold rate, or one central company agency who actually publish the gold rates, and so there will be a fraction of difference will be there between the, because of the currency exchange and many other factors. But at least that information is available. The price is here, is that price is here, is that something like that. So innovation ecosystem expansion. I think because this API, RESTful API, a lot of innovation happened last 15 years now, and I think the the biggest part for that was the mobile penetration. Because of the mobile usage increased, so people start building new application. When they build a new application, they need to find a easy way to retrieve the data on app, so the app looks fast, work faster and all. So that is something uh, can benefit from this REST API. Of course, the cross-border compatibility. So if the Facebook or maybe SBS Transit API is there, they don't differentiate whether they're accessing from Apple or Android, or it doesn't matter, or from the local desktop on Windows. That doesn't matter much. Okay, so that is the compatibility part is there. And of course, because of the API, I think the UI UX become better and better, because the more innovative APIs we can design, sorry, the UIs we can design, because we know the what data to be shown. If you look at 20 years back or 15 years back when I started, the objective was to show the data on the screen. Now the objective is that how effectively you show the data on the screen in terms of icons rather than the text, right? Um, I don't know how many people use the application. The Google has one social media called as Orkut, and I remember we used to use like 15, 16 years back, and uh, of course, it was great tool that time, but of course, yeah, Facebook has really accelerated a lot, and Facebook has mostly focused on the mobile penetration that time, and then they are ahead in the race always. So Orkut is almost, I think, close. I remember. So the UI experience, user experience was pathetic for that, honestly. Yeah, but we're still happy where there's something to share, because you came from transition from Yahoo and Hotmail to Orkut, and you'll still feel good. And of course, the Facebook initially, start exploding after that. The UI UX play a very big part. And it's not just what is UI, but of course the data. And if the data is available in simple format, then you can actually play around the data. And instead of showing the data, you can show the icons, you show beautiful graphs with the UI UX. So let's deep dive a little bit on the components of API. These are the main components. There are main, but these are main endpoints. So when people say endpoints, endpoints is specific URL, or URI, you can say. Um, uh, so uh, uh, basically where the API can be accessed. Okay, so each endpoint correspond to a specific function resource that API provides. So these are nothing but a URL. So I'll give one example. Of course, before that, I would like to show you the Postman, but later I'll explain you what is the Postman and all. So those who do the API for testing, they use this tool called as Postman. Okay, so this is the URL. So you take you see here. So in this URL, if you see, I am putting the my company and then employees. This is the my resource. Resource means what data I want to see. I want to see employees data. Now, if you go to Lazada, sometimes they hide the URL. You don't see that. But when I actually I'm searching, shoes for women, for example, they might be hitting one internal URL internally, which is not visible to us. Okay, that is what I was showing the real URL using the Postman for application which we develop very simple for our testing. So this is for the women. Okay, so this is called a URL. So anybody say endpoint, you know this is endpoint. What endpoint I need to access? People talk in the meetings. Then don't worry, they are talking about this. Okay. The second is the request method. So now this is very interesting. So request method means what you want, right? We'll discuss get post detail in detail in next slides. But basically, get means give me. Post means I want to give you. So take an example. When you are asking a menu to the waiter, actually you are asking get me the menu, give me the menu. Then he'll give all the menu to you. Now you select the menu. You say very good, everything fine. I need roti paratha. Okay, okay. Then you say I need one roti paratha. So actually you're putting a request. So same happen if you look at here. Now I say I like this shoe. Now pink, wow, this is great. Or maybe this is great. So basically when you select this, is nothing but you're actually posting that information to server and asking, okay, give me the more details about that. And then they'll show you more details. Once you're convinced, then you click on buy. Buy is another post. So it's like when you're asking roti paratha, you ask him, can you customize me and put less cheese or less oil, for example? You're asking more details. And then you say, fine, okay, get me to paratha. Okay, something like that. So this is something, in the software also happen the same way when you ask for request. So take an example, get all employees, which is endpoint. When I just click on send, so basically what happened is that nothing but I'll get all the requests for all the employees in my company. So this is something happen same with the Lazada, which I just showcase you now here. Okay. So I think latest time, this is our local server, so it may take some time. Okay. So similarly, we have the other put is there. Okay. Put is nothing but basically you want to amend the order. So maybe you given the order and you say uh, is order ready? They'll say no, no. Okay, can you do one thing? Okay, change one, put one egg paratha, one plain paratha, for example. So it's like a change in the requirement. And delete means you can say, okay, can you cancel the paratha and get me something else, for example, Milo or whatever, right? So that is something you can say delete to perform different operations. We'll see the real time with our data. Request and response format. API often specify the format which data should be sent to request, JSON, XML, and the format which response is delivered. So basically, there will a different format will be there. We'll also see that format. And as I mentioned, right, now API we cannot just open for everybody. People click, 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 and then start accessing our data. No, we have to keep an authentication. So somebody who are authorized, then they will do the exchange key, technical exchange key, and then only they can access the content. Right. So then our developer will do that. As part of the BA, we should ask for is the API open or API need to access by specific team. Then who should access what data? These questions come. So as a BA, ITBA, you need to remember that when you're designing any application, not just API, but our topic is API for today, but generally you need to ask this question always. Is there any data access restriction we need to implement or that application will take care? So what does that mean is that when you're accessing the data from the server here, right? And if you're calling for Apple device and if you're Makran, then sometimes this database and this business logic, they know that, okay, I need to only show you Makran data from Malaysia. Makran is not allowed to see data from Singapore. So they take care of that. Or sometimes you need to build that functionality on top of the request and response as a BA. Or you at least inform the technical team that guys, please implement the access control mechanism. If it is already exist, they will follow that. If not, they will ask you to build that also as part of the implementation. And then this is what the scope get increase. As a BA, you need to control that and say that, okay, if you cannot do that, what happens? If you do that, If it is mandatory, then we need to extend the timelines because we are not thought through about the authorization part. So authorization is very important. Authentication is very basic. They take care anyway, but the authorization is one of the important part for API. As mentioned, endpoint, the HTTP like employees is endpoint. Let me see whether the data we got extracted. You seem to see with the data. I don't know. It's not working today. Okay, we got a response here. See, we got response here. So when I click on the list of employees, I got all the data. Okay, later I will go into the detail. I'll show you what does that mean. Okay, um, you can see the preview here. It will show you all the data. See, this all the data is there. So now this data is coming in a very different format. Okay, this format is called as JSON format. So why this JSON format is there? Basically, because when you pass this information to a front end UI, they will not show you this data. They'll show you the data like this. So they'll pick up the picture and everything, and they'll show you the data. Okay, so maybe we'll take an example. If you look at the, I hope you can see my screen, everyone. If you look at the employee, the first chunk is there. Designation, employee ID, full name, and email ID and salary. This is what we kept it. It is repeating for all the employees. Okay, so your actually program basically go and read this data and they parse means basically they keep it separately and then they will show data on the screen. Okay, the second is the request method. So I mentioned the request method was here get. This is the request method: get, post, put, patch, delete. Okay, this is the request methods. Okay, this, the post means we submit the data. Now what happened is that I got the data, and suppose I got the data, I got like 20,000 records and all, and generally nobody do that because it will be heavy load. Because if you look time, it takes 2 seconds. 2 seconds is too high actually. Okay, we should have milliseconds. So I said, okay, I want only a data of this employee, James Bond, for example, right? Or we take Shakub Sheikh, maybe 101. I need only this data. So now how do you know what is the single ID I need to pass? So basically what happened is that in Lazada, take an example. I will give this example because you're using Lazada every day, I hope. So I'm not promoting Lazada. I can take an example. Okay, so for example, when you're clicking on this internally, they know this ID and they will pass the ID to another system to get the more details. Okay, this is what I'm trying to explain you. So take an example. I want only data of this Yakub Sheikh for 101 data. So there is another API, another endpoint. Okay, and these are all endpoints. See, URL and endpoints. Now there is an endpoint. Take employee. Now you see it's a singular employee. What is the employee ID? Which employee ID did I want? I need 101. And then you basically send data. So data goes to server. It will identify who's this 101 guy. Oh, it's a Jacob. Okay, it's a yeah, Jacob Sheikh. Okay, then they pass you only that data, only that data. So this is called as the basically another get method with a specific details. Okay, specific details. Now post is that when you want to basically create or a new request. Now we want to basically create a new employee. Generally in Lazada you don't create that. Okay, you know that it is not allowed for us to but if you're a Lazada seller, right? Take an example for a minute. You're a Lazada seller. You need to upload the application, you need to upload the product and all the details. That time they use the post method API actually. So this post method API, what it does, basically submit the data to server for processing. Okay, so if you look at the create new employee ID, it is a post method, post. And here you pass all the details basically. In the body you basically pass all the details. So we say maybe employee ID, we say maybe 2000 2500. We don't use Joe Biden, we say something, maybe we say Andy Chang. Okay, then we say maybe he joined as chief data officer. Okay, maybe salary we will not give 250k is too much, maybe give 220k. Okay, and then maybe we can just update the email ID here if you want. Okay, quickly. So basically You don't do this manually, and this one is done by the application from front end. And in back end, this is what happened. So as a ITBA, you should know. So generally, take an example. You're writing a requirement. Okay, there is a requirement that okay, we as an application owner or a Lazada seller, I need a UI so I can update the my product or a detail, or as a HR build a application for me. So when new employee comes in, I should have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fields to input the data for our HR, he or she, and then she will input the data. So in backend, this is what happened. Your data is being actually given in such a format, and then basically when you send, actually now we are doing send, we are doing get earlier. Now we are doing post method, which is the posting the data. Okay. Now when you send, basically it will go and create a new see success. Now Andy ID was 2500. I want to get Andy's data only by employee ID. So I go to employee and I just pass his ID here. So then your basically your employee has been created on the database. See, Andy's details came. Okay. So similarly, put is there. Put is basically update the existing data to modify the resources. Suppose you realize that, oh, we don't want to give Andy CDO. We want to give Andy as maybe COO, Chief Operating Officer, or maybe head of BA or something else, for example. So you can just update this particular information. Okay. And instead of passing all the information, you can just pass the employee ID and these two details, and the details will get updated. Those who are already using SQL, you know, right? In SQL, use this update statement, right? You don't pass all the fields and all the columns, right? You only give a specific column to update, and based on what? Update last name to Patak. To whom? Makarand. Okay, the where first name is Makarand, and ID is something like that. So similarly, the put is one of the method. Delete is the one who basically delete the data. Okay, and um, the update is, update is basically the put and update. The difference is that uh, they work in same fashion, but in update we generally give more the data. Okay. So if you look at the delete, I can just delete the employee, but when you're deleting it, last which employee you want to delete, right? So you have to pass that information into body, and then you say I want to delete maybe Andy. Okay, and then you just say it will delete. You can define in business logic, okay, always delete the soft delete, don't do the hard delete, and keep the data as a deleted tables. You can, as a BA, you can mention that. So somebody asks you to implement these methods, you can ask specific questions to them. Shall we delete hard delete or soft delete? Those who are working in banks, you need to keep the data for 7 years. But do you need to keep the data in the same table for 7 years? I don't think so, because there is a database backup happen every night in the banks, and that is sufficient. But retrieving that backup is like another level of miracle. Okay, you have to get hundreds of approvals. So generally, people keep the soft copy within the application or the same database for maybe month or year, and then they delete permanently. If required any investigation, they can always retrieve from the tape backup from the database. And then the request and response format are there. So one is the JSON format, which I just mentioned. These are all JSON formats. Basically, these are all JSON formats. Okay. XML format, I give an example to you. So that is, quite old ways to, define this data in very XML. It was very complicated. So I used to also work on XML, and one XML was like a very big file, like 30, 40, 50 columns. And you mentioned everything in that XML, compare XML. I used to remember we used to have this version control that XML. It was painful. Uh, Now very less people use this, and there are various formats are there in API. The response format, uh, the status code 200 is okay. The status code 40. So what happens is that when you do the request response, every time you do the request response, there is a status being sent by the server to you. Okay, whether how whether you got the data or not. This is just a format. The same format I want to convert into XML. This will look like this, very bit differently. Then maybe HTML format. I don't know if it works or not. Okay, so you can create, but this is based on the application. Now This tool is called as the Postman tool. I think it's very, very famous and popular. Those who are already using API knows how great the tool is. You can save a lot of things and all with this tool. There's a desktop app is also for this tool. So anybody who actually want to play a good role as ITBA should also learn the Postman tool. Okay, without that, your life is not that easy. Trust me. And we basically show the various status code. So this is one of the question they will ask you when you are defining the API. Then for example, when the if the server say 404, do you want to show 404 on the screen? No, right? You want to give the better UI UX experience. Um, I think I can give an example to you. So take an example of Amazon. Okay, Amazon. Suppose we take an example of Amazon, right? And in Amazon, you go to shopping, for example, Amazon shopping, and I say slash products. Okay, so there's no such resource available which I'm trying to access. See, this is 404 actually. And you can be innovative, you can say some fun and all. Okay, I know you are getting bored, you're access anything. So as a ITBA, these are um, the requirements our user will not give us, never, right? So as a BA ITBA, our technical team expect that okay, you should give such a requirement when they're trying to access the URL which is even not available. What we want to showcase, for example. Okay, so I think they are doing advertise also here, dogs of Amazon. Okay, so very very interesting as a BA job when we are even defining the APIs. Uh, so header and body response body is there. So basically, you as a ITBA when you design the response, you can mention that okay, the response should come like this. You can the ITBA job is also define those fields. Some company the ITBA don't even touch that. So but I encourage that ITBA should know this in detail. Then it will helpful for your technical team also, and you'll also know what is happening in while you are building an API. Response body is there. Header is basically this is nothing but a header. Basically, you pass the information. These are the headers. So you see headers are there. So you can mention this. This is the header. Okay. So generally, as ITBA, headers and all will define by tech team. You just define the response, what data should. So they will ask you what information I need to pass the to get the employee ID. Then you have to say that okay, you pass the employee ID. So you just imagine Lazada example again. What we did, we search for a shoes for a woman. Then what we did, we selected the shoes. So these are the inputs we are giving for every API further. So as part of this screen, you'll see at least maybe, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 APIs are being called when to just to showcase this page. Some of them are micro API, just showcase you, like for example, one of the API, maybe this is showing this. So when the request comes, so one of the API is they are getting this number. Okay. Items found is static, and shoes for woman is captured from here, and 9583 come from the backend, for example. I think ITBA, as you know, right, how this is being for, how this needs to be designed and how to write requirements. Okay, so these are the things you do as API. Authentication, as I mentioned, so basically authentication means who should access, right? First is who should access, and what they should access is authorization. So authentication always come first, then authorization. Um, so for example, you take an example, right? You got a train ticket or plane ticket. So authentication, okay, you got a ticket. Now when you go into the plane, they'll decide whether based on the ticket you are allowed to seat in economic class or business class. So that's authorization part actually. Okay, it's very simple terms. Um, they'll pass API key. There is something called OAuth authorization is very is a bit technical. Is one of the token related topics, security topics. Is very famous OAuth, and they also do the bearer token. So basically, if you ever wonder that authentication is one of the kind of the API which generally Google and Facebook also uses. So you can build an application and you say, I don't want to build a security, and I don't want to get into that trouble. So I want to do the collaboration with Facebook, and I want to use the Facebook login API. so they can allow, and you can use Facebook. So if you build an application, say log in with your Facebook or log in with your Google or log in with your Apple ID, so basically they will do the your authentication, and that is further they expose the APIs. But of course when you access, they'll say, okay, Facebook would like to access your basic data profile, for example. You'll say yes, access everything, no problem. Then basically they will give the free of charge that service to you. Basically I don't think so they charge anything, but I'm giving example. They are giving authentication. Now the next is a Swagger. I think this is very interesting topic, and ITBA, Swagger is one of the tool, and in Swagger you mentioned about the how each API and how each item in API basically to be displayed. So what does that mean is, in order to define this particular how the request and response happen, everything is mentioned in the Swagger. So as a part of the ITBA, they will ask you to define a Swagger or provide me the Swagger in order to build an API. So don't worry, it's not complicated. Don't worry at all. Don't look at this screen for a minute. Okay. So this is the Swagger. This is the Swagger your. So this is a nothing but your endpoint. So you can define as a BA. Okay, you put endpoint slash suppose CDS services example here. In our example, it was slash what was that, get employee. It was, you define, okay, uptick employees. Okay, or you can say get employees. Okay, this get method, sorry, and you can say it's in employees. So as a ITBA, you can define that. In post, what URL I should define, or what endpoint I should define. If you look our post in get, in the post, it was like when I create the employee, the endpoint is different. It's uptick employee, and for the get, it's uptick employees, right? So it's a multi employee we are asking to get, but in the post we are asking one employee. Now once you define this one employee, when you post, but they still need to pass the information, right? And that information you can actually mention here. So take an example of this particular post here. See here, you can define the if it is a successful response, then what message should be displayed on the screen. So when you create an employee, you need some information, right? Oh, thank you for creating employee successfully, for example. So that you can do it application level, but at the backend level in the logs you need some information. So this is because this communication happens between computer to computer or program to program. Once they say 200 or 400 for invalid, or 404 not found, for example, then basically you can mention that as part of this Swagger. So last time when the Swagger was not so famous, we used to define everything by our in Notepad, or in the um, Confluence, but now this is a good tool. And ITBA, you also need to mention about how the data should be shown. So take an example of this particular example of get employee. Um, if you look at this data, right? So um, uh, this is very simple data, but there could be an API you can design. You can say that, okay, the moment I see details of this particular employee, I need sub details of that employee also. That where did he work for 5 years, for example, your data, and then you show sub data. So that you can define in arrays, and all various technical terms are there. As ITB, I'm sure you are aware of all this. You can define that. So how to use a Swagger itself is another complete course, but I'm just showcasing quickly given the time we have. But it's very useful, and this will become getting. I'm sure everybody using it. If you're not using it, we start learning it. This is very mandatory. You take any technology, because we also take blockchain courses, and some of the people come and they are not very well aware about the API. I feel sad about them, but it's okay. I think they can learn it from there. Once you know, okay, this is the topic, I need to learn it. And you no need to code, so don't worry about that part. You no need to code, you can just define and design. And sometime you're not alone designing in silo. You will work with the developer and say, okay, these are my requirements, let's define the Swagger together. Then they will give they'll say, okay, put this, put that, or they'll say, okay, technical errors I will define, you don't worry, they can still do it. Okay. And basically if you look at here, right, you just mention the content here. Actually you can update here and it will appear here. And that's why you see a file is very big. It's not like that. Okay, for various. So Swagger is a very, very useful tool. Swagger and Postman will be a savior for you if you're using the API. Okay, now we'll quickly move to the your responsibilities. Design the life cycle. Of course, the first is the requirement gathering, no brainer. You have to do the engagement and ask them what exactly they're looking for. They will not tell you I need an API. No, that's between the discussion between you, developer, architecture, maybe some other people. Um, and it's up to the technical team to define whether they need API or not an API, right? So of course, as ITBA, we will give that luxury, or give that decision making power to the tech team or architecture to define the strategy of the company. Um, just because the API, we can do it in API, does not mean that you have to do it in API. So some companies, they unnecessarily push this, which we don't allow, which I don't agree. But yeah, sometimes they have strategy looking at the long term. Sometimes the especially in the banks, the or legacy system, not just banks. I mean, every time I give a bank example, because I worked in banks, but legacy system, for example, the data you can easily extract from the file, which is already happening from last 15 years, and everybody's happy. Suddenly, somebody comes and says, "No, no, we should design API there." Right? And you say, "What the hell it is that? The data is already accessing. We just need to add one column in that file." So sometimes those push from this architecture or those people, actually they're looking forward actually to change the organization, the way we work. So take it as a positive, and of course if it is required cost benefit analysis, if it is asking 100K to build an API, and if you can spend in 10K, um, uh, unless you see a future need that there are another 20 people is going to access this data and we're going to expand this further, yeah, then you can invest that. It's a future investment can do. Always ask a question to them. uh, that these are actually the basic responsibilities analysis. I think the feasibility study, so basically what happens is that uh, when you define the get a requirement and you say, okay, now we need to define the API, so you have to do a lot of analysis that is any team is going to access or any more team are going to access the data, then how we can define multiple APIs. So take an example, right? There is a requirement that you need to showcase, maybe you get the 50 columns from the backend and generate a file and send it to one of the system. uh, then what happened is that you're only thinking for that particular moment about that team who actually given the requirement to you to do the extraction from your legacy system or any other database system or any backend system, for example. You need to always ask a question: in future, this data is required by anybody else. So another team might come and say, okay, I need two fields only. So of course, designing the API, I think, makes life easier. But always it goes back to your investments and everything. But this will make a system a little bit cleaner. Otherwise, you have this lot of extraction, bad jobs, and all, which actually very painful activity sometimes. And then basically, once you do this analysis, you can mention, okay, we should define the API or not define the API. In API also, there will be a lot of debate happen that, okay, we should show all the 20 fields into one API, or we should split API by resource. When you say by resource, it means by, um, I don't want to show the employee details and employee salary in one API. I want to a separate salary for employee salary API, for example. Why this is required? So when you design an application, so you can actually design the salary as a separate secure page or maybe a different page you don't want to show. And then this employee data you want to open for everybody, operations team, your HR team, maybe external team, and they can see the employee data, no problem. But you want to have access to their salary only to the employees, not anybody else, then you can define that separately. Even these are an example. There's no harm. You can also always hide the data, but yeah, you define the separate API is always easier. So these are the things you need to consider. And of course, you need to work with the developers. You cannot do it in silo. This is very important. Quick techniques to collaborate. I think these are the same thing what you do for our normal BA. But when you're specifically working for API, I think you need to define the a good have the brainstorming workshops first, and get the architecture there who are supportive generally to the BAs based on my experience, and use the various tools. You can actually use the either Notepad or any other tool, doesn't matter. If you use the Swagger, they'll be more than happy. If you know the Swagger, if no, you can learn it. It's so very easy. And then basically a various design tool you can use. Okay, we want to show this, that data, take an example of that. Or the first screen will look like this. You just search it. Second screen, we want to show the data. Third screen, we want a user to submit. If you're building an application for B2C, suppose, basically to the external market, you can define that. Um, I think focus on user. These are the basic things you also follow in other things. But specifically for API, two things you need to consider. One is the postman for your own testing, and the Swagger to design it. So Postman is another tool, and I think that is separate full day training for a Postman, because there are a lot of features in Postman, how to use, how to do testing, how to do UAT. I know we spoke last meeting that VAs are being asked for to do the testing, so they need to use Postman before even they're accessing the data in application. Um, Application user can test, but you need to test the technical stuff before. The API is ready, you can test. UI will come next week, no problem. You can test the API and say it's working fine. Yeah, I given the wrong IDs and everything. So for example, I say employee in LG. So for example, if I give this, we'll see what error is defined here in this particular request. Okay. So the see message missing authentication token. I think we don't have token. So I think the error message should come correctly, which is not coming. So we need to change it. This. Okay. So, so these are the things you can do as part of the BA, and this is quite important because none of the applications are we're building anybody actually. Any you take any or any verticals, not just banking, insurance, oil and gas, manufacturing, retail, you name it. Everybody's using API, and you're using on daily basis. You don't even know there is APIs behind it. Okay, so as everybody is doing as ITBA, it should be a top skill in your resume. I know how to design API. I know how to use Postman. I know how to use Swagger. These three things has to be there in your resume to add your skill value and everything. So with this, I will come back to the Q&A session. So I'm happy to, the floor is open. Ask any question, could be related to the any topics within the API. I'm happy to, or any other topic, ITB also I can explain, no problem, but we focus on API. So happy to, over to you, Nadir.
Okay. Thank you so much, Makran, so far. So we have one question from Khairul Amirin
Mhm,
Ismail. So how to conduct a feasibility study of the user requirement if
mhm.
we have zero knowledge on it?
Okay, so feasibility, I hope you are referring the feasibility from the system point of view, whether the requirement which user asks, whether it's capable to get that data or not. I think the feasibility study, the first part is you capture the requirement very clearly, right? And if you have access to that particular application as ITBA, which generally should have it, you can actually go and check yourself whether the data is available or not. If you're not aware how to even check the data, the best part is the actual end user who's using application or some operation team who's using that application. Now, if it is the data is simple and all, they will not ask you to do the feasibility check. If the complex operation are there, then only they'll ask you feasibility check. So you need to break down the requirement into small chunks, step by step, and then you go and check each and every part of that, whether the data is accessible or available or not, and then only you can complete the feasibility check. So feasibility check is always being pushed to the ITB and say, tell me if it's feasible or not. They will ask, they need answer yes, no quickly, but there's no yes or no answer. You need to split the answer into various, say, okay, it's feasible, this part, that part, and what are the constraints are there in order to get that data.
Okay, Carol, I hope that answered your question. And yes, so okay, thank you for explanation. Okay, good. So we are, now it's the Q&A time before we wrap up today's session. And please feel free to ask your questions. So if you would like, you can unmute yourself, or if you would like me to read your question, then you can just type in the chat box. I will read them for you. Okay, Sinwa, are there any resources, websites to learn more on other API tools?
There are a lot of information available on web. If you understand the basic concept, I would recommend that you can use the generative AI first to understand the basics. And website, there are many websites are there. You can just Google it and you can find it. But you find out that for which application you want to build, because it's big ocean and many things are there. Like Lazada and all, they use microservices heavily. But if you go to banks, insurance companies, manufacturing companies, or small companies, they don't use microservices so heavily because they don't have so much of mobile penetration and quick need for a quick data response from the server. So um, there's not one site, to be honest. Unfortunately, many sites are there. But you first ask whether you want to learn RESTful API or web services or other different types of API. If you're a technical person, sky's the limit. You can learn any other things. There are more and more concept coming. I will explain you one thing. There is a one concept that, for example, you define one API, and that API call another API, and that API will split the API into multiple small APIs, and then they get the data back, they aggregate, and then they send back. So there is a lot of complex things people are building now with this RESTful API. So there's no one website you can refer to api.com. There is a site, I guess, to learn from there. But generative AI content component, a lot of. I think, did you attend the last meeting, last meeting where we actually teach how to use generative AI? And that you can apply, that you can use it. Actually, you can use either Gemini or a Perplexity tool. ChatGPT I don't recommend, sorry, but content is not that great. But yeah, you can use the Perplexity or maybe the the Google Gemini AI tool to get the details from there, because they also give URLs there. Okay.
All right, thanks. And also, Sinwa, obviously this is just a 1 hour session, and I believe if yourself and colleagues can attend our in-person workshop, which we'll be announcing soon, I'm sure Makran will go more in details, and we'll have more hands-on activity to help ITBA professionals on how to implement APIs and more details as well, right, Makran?
Yeah, sure. In the detail session, we actually have the we give a lot of notes. In that, you'll find a lot of URLs and all. Yeah.
All right. Any more questions? Okay. All right.
Nadir, you can mention about the upcoming session also. I think.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Soon. Yeah. Soon we'll be announcing our dates for the upcoming in-person workshops that we'll be holding in Malaysia. And just to let you know, it's going to be fully claimable course as usual. And if you would like to know how the fully claimable courses work, then please reach out to us. These are contact numbers. And we'll be happy to assist you further on that. And yes, also our courses are fully claimable, and it comes with a professional certification as well. All right.
Yeah.
And if that's it for today, then we would like to thank you for participating and taking a time out from your busy schedule and being active in the session as well. So after the session is over, we'll be sending you the presentation slides, and you'll be able to access the recorded sessions as well. Please feel free to also share with your colleagues for better reach. Yeah, that's it for today. Makran, thank you so much for another insightful session, and hope to see you next time.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.